Have you ever looked at someone and decided who they were before they spoke a single word? When a polished CEO laughed at an old pickup truck parked outside a business conference, everyone around her smiled politely. To them, the driver looked like another small-town contractor who had wandered into the wrong place. No one noticed the quiet confidence in his eyes or the worn lunchbox on the passenger seat, packed by his 12-year-old daughter that morning. What the CEO didn't know was that the man she dismissed owned the one factory that could save her collapsing company. But by the time she discovered the truth, the real challenge was no longer about business. It was about earning the trust of a father who had learned that character is revealed long before titles ever are. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories about kindness, resilience, and second chances, don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's begin. The sun had barely cleared the rooftops of Grand Rapids when Ethan Brooks stepped onto the front porch with a steaming mug of black coffee in one hand. The morning air carried the smell of fresh-cut grass and the distant rumble of trucks already heading toward the industrial district. It was the kind of morning his late wife, Emma, used to call honest weather, clear enough to promise a good day, but cool enough to remind people that nothing worthwhile came easily. Inside the kitchen, 12-year-old Lily carefully closed the lid on a blue metal lunchbox. She checked its contents one more time before smiling to herself. "Turkey sandwich," she whispered. "Apple slices. No cookies today." Ethan stepped inside and laughed softly. "No cookies. You're getting stricter every week." She shrugged, trying to sound serious. "You told Mr. Harris last week that your doctor said you should eat healthier." "I did say that. So I'm helping." He accepted the lunchbox with a grateful smile instead of arguing. She wasn't trying to be his parent. She was simply doing what they had learned to do after losing Emma, take care of each other in small, quiet ways. Before leaving, Ethan picked up a worn leather notebook from the hallway table. Years of use had softened its edges. Folded inside were sketches, production notes, reminders, and occasionally, little drawings Lily had slipped between the pages without telling him. Beside it rested an old brass pocket watch. He wound it carefully. Tick, tick, tick. The familiar sound filled the silent hallway. "Still works," Lily said. "So do we." She smiled, though her eyes carried the kind of understanding that children should never have to learn so young. Outside, Ethan climbed into his faded 1998 Ford pickup. The dark green paint had long surrendered to time, and tiny scratches covered nearly every panel. Most people saw an old truck ready for retirement. Ethan saw the last vehicle Emma had ever driven. He rested his hand on the steering wheel for a brief moment before starting the engine. Across town, luxury sedans and black SUVs lined the entrance of the Midwest Manufacturing Partnership Summit. Executives in tailored suits stepped onto the sidewalk while assistants balanced coffee cups and laptops. Ethan eased his pickup into an empty parking space near the back of the lot. As he climbed out, two executives glanced toward the truck. "Looks like somebody's maintenance contractor got lost," one muttered. The other chuckled. Ethan heard them. He simply closed the door, picked up Lily's lunchbox, tucked the leather notebook beneath his arm, and walked toward the conference entrance without changing his pace. Inside the lobby, conversations paused for only a heartbeat before continuing. Expensive watches flashed beneath polished sleeves. Company logos gleamed across display booths. Standing near the registration desk, Victoria Langford greeted investors and suppliers with practiced confidence. As CEO of Langford Medical Technologies, she had spent years learning to read people within seconds. Her eyes landed briefly on Ethan. then on the old truck keys in his hand. She offered a polite but distant smile before turning toward Marcus Reed. "Let's focus on partners who can actually handle our production needs," she said quietly. Ethan wasn't close enough to hear the words, but he noticed the look. He had seen it before. Many times. He simply adjusted the lunchbox in his hand, signed his name on the registration sheet, and walked into the conference hall, unaware that the woman who had already dismissed him would soon discover that the future of her company rested behind the wheel of that old pickup. The conference ballroom buzzed with polished conversations and polished promises. Large screens displayed charts predicting growth, innovation, and record profits. Every presentation seemed to use the same words: efficiency, expansion, optimization. Ethan listened quietly from the third row. When people spoke, he watched their faces more than their slides. He had learned years ago that numbers could impress investors, but eyes usually revealed what spreadsheets couldn't. After the morning presentations ended, attendees drifted toward the networking hall. Victoria Langford stood near a display of Langford Medical Technology's newest surgical monitoring devices. She answered questions confidently, though the smile on her face never quite reached her eyes. Marcus Reed stepped beside her, lowering his voice. "We're running out of time." "I know. Our overseas supplier officially shut down production this morning." Victoria kept her expression calm. "How long?" Marcus hesitated. If we don't secure another manufacturer within 30 days, hospitals will start canceling contracts. And the board. They're already asking questions." Victoria glanced across the crowded room. "We need a supplier with capacity, certifications, and a flawless quality record." Marcus nodded. "Which usually means a very expensive one." Before Victoria could answer, another executive approached. "Victoria, there's a gentleman asking if you have 5 minutes." She looked toward the entrance. Ethan stood patiently beside one of the display tables, holding his leather notebook instead of a glossy company brochure. Marcus quietly frowned. "Who's that?" "I'm not sure." Ethan walked over with an easy smile. Good afternoon. I'm Ethan Brooks from Brooks Precision Manufacturing." Victoria politely shook his hand. "Nice to meet you. I've followed your company's work for years." "Thank you. I believe our team could help with some of your future production needs." Marcus glanced briefly at Ethan's conference badge, then toward the parking lot outside, where the faded pickup remained visible through the glass entrance. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. "I'm afraid," Marcus interrupted, "we're focusing on larger manufacturing partners." Ethan wasn't offended. "I understand." He opened his notebook anyway. Inside were photographs instead of advertisements. Factory teams. Production lines. Employees celebrating work anniversaries. Quality inspection stations. Victoria barely had time to look before another board member called her name from across the room. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. "Today's schedule is extremely tight." Ethan closed the notebook. "No problem." He smiled. "If things ever change, here's my card." She accepted it politely. "I appreciate it." He nodded once and walked away. Marcus slipped the business card into a folder without reading it. Across the room, another supplier immediately began offering promises of massive production capacity and aggressive pricing. Victoria turned her attention there instead. Punaise. An hour later, Ethan drove across town toward Brooks Precision Manufacturing. The moment his truck entered the parking lot, the atmosphere changed completely. Employees waved. Someone honked playfully from a forklift. Rosa Alvarez, the factory's production supervisor for nearly 20 years, met him at the entrance. "Lily remembered your lunch again." Ethan lifted the blue lunchbox. "She never forgets." Rosa smiled. "Smart kid." Inside the factory, machines hummed with steady precision. There were no raised voices, no frantic supervisors. Workers moved with quiet confidence born from years of trust. A young technician approached Ethan holding two machined components. "I think this measurement is right," he said, "but I'd like another opinion." Ethan studied the parts. "You already know the answer." The technician smiled nervously. "I just wanted to make sure." Ethan handed one piece back. "What happens if you're wrong?" "A patient might receive a faulty medical device." "And what happens if you stop to double-check?" "I lose 2 minutes." Ethan nodded. "I'll take 2 lost minutes over 1 injured patient every single time." The young man smiled. "I'll run the inspection again." As he walked away, Rosa leaned against the workbench. "You know, most owners would have just answered the question." Ethan looked around the factory floor. "If they only know how to follow me, this place won't survive without me." Before Rosa could reply, Ethan's office phone rang. She answered. Her expression slowly changed. Then she covered the receiver. "Ethan, it's an emergency request." "From who?" Rosa looked at the caller ID twice. "You might want to take this yourself." Ethan took the receiver from Rosa without rushing. "Brooks Precision. This is Ethan." A calm but strained voice answered. "Mr. Brooks, my name is Daniel Foster. I'm the Director of Operations at Langford Medical Technologies." Ethan recognized the company name immediately. "I'm listening." "We've encountered a serious manufacturing emergency. Our primary supplier overseas has stopped production, effective immediately." Ethan leaned against his desk, his eyes drifting toward the factory floor beyond the office window. Workers moved from one station to another with quiet purpose, unaware that a conversation upstairs might soon affect every one of them. Daniel continued. "We're searching for a domestic manufacturer capable of producing our cardiac monitoring components." Ethan remained silent for a moment. "That's a demanding product line." "It is." "And you're calling us because, Daniel exhaled. "Because every quality audit we've reviewed over the last 10 years keeps pointing back to Brooks Precision." Ethan glanced at Rosa. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "I appreciate your confidence," Ethan replied, "but capacity isn't something I can promise over the phone." "I understand. We don't sacrifice quality to move faster." "So we've heard." Another pause settled between them. Finally, Daniel asked, "Would you at least consider meeting with our CEO tomorrow morning?" Ethan thought of the conference. He remembered the brief handshake, the polite smile, the quick dismissal. "I'll consider it." "Thank you." After ending the call, Rosa folded her arms. "So, they need help." She smiled. "I guess that much. They're in trouble." And Ethan looked through the office window again. On the production floor, an older machinist was patiently teaching a new apprentice how to inspect a tiny component under magnification. No one appeared rushed. That was intentional. "I won't promise something we can't deliver." "You never do."
Deep breathing.
Across town, the atmosphere inside Langford Medical Technologies couldn't have been more different. The executive conference room felt heavy. Folders covered the polished walnut table. Financial projections glowed red on the large screen. Victoria stood at the front of the room, while members of the board studied her in silence. One director finally spoke. "How many days?" 28, Victoria answered. "Until production stops." Another board member adjusted his glasses. "And after that, hospitals begin purchasing from competitors." The room remained silent. Then another voice broke it. "We trusted overseas manufacturing because it was cheaper." Victoria didn't argue. It was the industry's standard. It was also a risk. She nodded once. "Yes." The chairman leaned forward. "Can your company recover?" Victoria answered honestly. "Only if we secure the right manufacturing partner." "The right one," he repeated, "or the convenient one?" She met his eyes. "The right one." Marcus entered quietly, carrying a thick folder. "I've reviewed every certified domestic supplier available." He placed the folder on the table. "There are only 3 capable of meeting our technical standards." Victoria opened the first profile. "Too small." The second, already operating at full capacity. She turned to the final file. The cover displayed a simple logo. Brooks Precision Manufacturing. No flashy branding, no corporate slogans. Only decades of inspection certifications, perfect compliance records, and confidential partnerships with some of the country's most respected medical manufacturers. Victoria frowned. "I've never heard of them." Marcus hesitated. "You actually met the owner this morning?" Her eyes slowly lifted. "The man with the old pickup?" Marcus nodded. Neither of them spoke. For the first time that day, Victoria realized she couldn't remember anything about Ethan Brooks except the truck she had judged before she had truly seen the man. She quietly closed the folder. "Schedule the meeting." Marcus looked surprised. "For tomorrow." Victoria shook her head. "No." She picked up her car keys. "I'm going to his factory." The next morning, Victoria left the interstate and followed a quiet county road, lined with maple trees and aging brick warehouses. It wasn't the route she expected for one of the country's highest-rated precision manufacturers. She slowed her sedan as the navigation announced, "You have arrived." Ahead stood a modest brick building with a simple metal sign. Brooks Precision Manufacturing. No glass tower. No giant logo. No fountain at the entrance. Just a spotless parking lot, neatly trimmed flower beds, and employees greeting one another by name as they walked inside. Victoria stepped out of her car. A familiar pickup truck was already parked near the entrance. The faded green paint caught the morning sunlight. For a moment, she simply stared at it. Then she took a slow breath and walked toward the front door. Inside, Rosa Alvarez welcomed her with a warm smile. "You must be Ms. Langford." I'm Rosa. Ethan's expecting you." As they walked through the facility, Victoria instinctively looked for signs of disorder. She found none. The floors were spotless. Every workstation was organized. Machines ran with a steady rhythm instead of frantic speed. Employees greeted Rosa and each other with relaxed confidence. No one seemed afraid of making a mistake. Instead, they seemed determined to get every detail right. They passed a wall filled with framed photographs. Victoria stopped. Each picture showed an employee holding a small plaque. 5 years. 10 years. 25 years. 30 years. Some photographs included entire families. Children. Grandchildren. Holiday celebrations. Company picnics. "What is this?" Victoria asked quietly. Rosa smiled. Our history. Victoria looked closer. These aren't executives. No. They're machinists, inspectors, maintenance, shipping. Everyone who helped build this place. Rosa gently touched one of the frames. Ethan says people shouldn't become invisible just because they don't sit in an office. Victoria remained silent. The words lingered. They continued onto the production floor. An engineer paused a machine and approached Ethan with a clipboard. I found a measurement outside tolerance. How far? 0.03. Can it be corrected? Yes. Then correct it. No shortcuts. Ethan smiled. And when did I ever teach shortcuts? The engineer laughed. Never. He returned to his station without another word. Victoria watched the exchange. No lectures. No raised voices. Just trust. Ethan finally noticed her standing nearby. He wiped his hands with a clean shop towel before offering a handshake. Good morning, Ms. Langford. Good morning. I wasn't expecting you quite this early. I thought it was better to come in person. I'm glad you did. She looked around once more. I owe you an apology. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured toward the production floor. Would you like the tour first? She nodded. For nearly an hour, Ethan explained every process. Incoming inspections, material traceability, calibration, quality verification, final testing. Every question Victoria asked received a calm, direct answer. Nothing was exaggerated. Nothing was hidden. By the time they returned to the conference room overlooking the factory, she understood why Brooks' Precision appeared in so many confidential quality reports. Not because they were the biggest, because they were trusted. Victoria folded her hands. I was wrong about you. Ethan offered a small smile. It happens. No. I judged you before I knew anything about you. His eyes briefly drifted toward the parking lot, where the old truck sat beneath a tall oak tree. Most people do. She hesitated. Can Brooks' Precision take our contract? Ethan's expression became thoughtful. He opened a scheduling board hanging on the wall. Every production line for the next several months was filled with handwritten orders. Colored magnets covered nearly every available space. He looked back at Victoria. I wish the answer were simple. A quiet silence settled between them. Then he said the words she feared most. We don't have any open production capacity. Victoria felt her heart sink. After finally finding the one factory she could trust, another obstacle had appeared, one that money alone couldn't solve. Victoria looked at the scheduling board for several long seconds, hoping she had misunderstood what she was seeing. Rows of handwritten work orders stretched across the next 4 months. Every production line had already been promised to another customer. There were no empty spaces. She finally looked back at Ethan. If we paid a premium... He gently shook his head before she could finish. This isn't about price. What if we doubled your standard rate? The answer would still be the same. Victoria frowned. I'm offering enough to expand your operation. Ethan folded his arms comfortably. And delay deliveries for companies that trusted us months ago. They would understand. He smiled politely. I wouldn't. The room fell quiet. Victoria had spent years negotiating contracts. She had seen suppliers demand more money, more leverage, more ownership. She had never met one who refused more business. Ethan spoke first. When someone gives me their word, they build their plans around it. He pointed toward the production board. Those aren't just purchase orders. They're hospitals, family-owned companies, workers counting on steady hours. If I move one promise aside for a better offer, every promise after that becomes weaker. Victoria slowly lowered her eyes. For the first time in weeks, someone wasn't talking about profit. He was talking about responsibility. Around noon, Ethan glanced at his watch. I usually eat with my team. Victoria stood. I should probably get going. He hesitated. You're welcome to join us. She blinked, slightly surprised. I don't want to interrupt. You won't. A few minutes later, they sat outside beneath a large oak tree overlooking the factory parking lot. Employees spread out across picnic tables, laughing over sandwiches and paper cups of coffee. There was no executive dining room, no reserved seating. Ethan opened his blue lunchbox. Victoria smiled faintly. I remember seeing that yesterday. My daughter packed it. He unfolded a handwritten note tucked beneath the sandwich. Don't skip lunch this time. Love, Lily. He quietly laughed to himself. Victoria couldn't help smiling. She keeps an eye on you. More than she'd admit. As if on cue, another car pulled into the parking lot. A young girl stepped out carrying a backpack. Lily spotted her father immediately. Dad. Ethan stood. She ran across the grass and hugged him tightly. I forgot my science project. He laughed. I wondered why your backpack looked so light this morning. Only then did Lily notice Victoria. Oh. She stepped back politely. Hi. Victoria smiled warmly. Hi, I'm Victoria. Lily. Ethan made the introduction. This is Ms. Langford. The lady from the conference. Victoria looked slightly embarrassed. Yes. Lily simply nodded. Dad said everyone has bad days. Victoria looked at Ethan. You told her that I try not to bring work home. Lily opened the lunchbox. You didn't eat the apple. I was saving it. You always say that. She placed it back into his hand. Eat it. Ethan obediently took a bite. Victoria laughed a genuine laugh she hadn't heard from herself in weeks. For a brief moment, the pressure surrounding her company disappeared. She wasn't watching a manufacturer. She was watching a father. As Lily headed back toward her car, she waved. Bye, Dad. Love you. Love you too. After she drove away, Victoria spoke softly. Your daughter trusts you completely. Ethan watched the road until Lily disappeared from view. I try to earn that every day. Before Victoria could answer, Rosa hurried toward them from the factory entrance. Her expression was unusually tense. Ethan. He stood immediately. What happened? Our titanium supplier just called. And they've shut down unexpectedly. Rosa swallowed. The shipment we need for next week's production isn't coming. The laughter around the picnic tables faded into worried silence as Ethan realized one broken link in the supply chain now threatened every promise written on the production board. Rosa spread several purchase orders across the conference table. The supplier's warehouse caught fire last night, she explained. No one was hurt, but production has been suspended indefinitely. Ethan studied the documents without speaking. How much titanium do we still have? Enough for 6 days. And after that? Rosa slowly shook her head. Nothing. Outside the conference room window, machines continued humming as if nothing had changed. Operators focused on their work, unaware that the material keeping those machines running was about to disappear. Victoria broke the silence. Can another supplier fill the order? Rosa answered before Ethan could. We've already called 4. They're either booked months in advance or don't produce the grade we need. Ethan rested both hands on the table. Keep looking. You really think we'll find someone? I don't know. He offered a tired smile. But we'll keep looking until we can't.
And breather.
Victoria followed Ethan onto the factory floor. He stopped beside an experienced machinist named Carl, who was helping a younger employee adjust a cutting tool. Everything all right? Carl asked. We've got a supply problem. Carl nodded once. Tell us what you need. There was no panic. No complaints. Just quiet readiness. As they walked away, Victoria spoke softly. They trust you. Ethan glanced toward the production line. I trust them first. Those simple words stayed with her. Later that afternoon, Ethan found Victoria standing alone near the employee photo wall. She was studying a faded picture of a company picnic from nearly 20 years earlier. You've kept all of these? They're part of the story. She smiled faintly. I don't think I've ever put employee photos in our headquarters. You still can. She remained quiet. After a long pause, she finally spoke. My father started Langford Medical. Ethan listened without interrupting. He was an engineer. She looked at one of the photographs again. He believed every device we built represented someone's family waiting at home. What changed? Victoria's shoulders lowered. He had a stroke 2 years ago. I'm sorry. He can't speak clearly anymore. She swallowed. Some days he remembers my name. Some days he doesn't. For the first time since they had met, the confidence she carried like armor slipped away. The board thinks I'm fighting to protect my position. She shook her head. I'm trying to protect the company my father gave his entire life to build. Ethan didn't rush to respond. Instead, he quietly said, That sounds heavy. A small laugh escaped her, followed almost immediately by tears she quickly wiped away. I judged you because of your truck. She looked embarrassed. I thought if I looked successful enough, confident enough, no one would notice how scared I really was. Ethan nodded slowly. Fear has a way of making us see only the surface. She met his eyes. I'm sorry. I know. There was no bitterness in his voice, only understanding. Just then, a loud metallic bang echoed across the factory. The steady rhythm of the machine stopped. Workers turned toward the center production line. A warning light flashed bright red. Rosa hurried over. The 5-axis milling machine just shut down. Carl checked the control panel. The spindle's locked. Can it be repaired? Ethan asked. Carl's expression answered, before his words did. It'll take at least 3 days to replace the damaged assembly. 3 days. With only 6 days of titanium remaining and an impossible production schedule already filling every calendar square, the factory had just lost its most important machine. Victoria stared at the silent production line. For the first time, she realized Ethan wasn't only carrying his own company's future. He was carrying the hopes of hundreds of families, including hers. The factory floor fell into an uneasy silence. For a few moments, no one spoke. The flashing warning light above the disabled milling machine painted slow red circles across the polished concrete floor. Carl carefully removed the machine's side panel and inspected the damaged spindle assembly. He looked back at Ethan and quietly shook his head. It's cracked. No temporary repair. I wouldn't trust one. Ethan nodded. Then we don't force it. Victoria watched several employees gather nearby. She expected frustration. Instead, she heard questions. What can I do? Where do you need me? Can we shift work to line 3? Nobody asked whether they were going home early. Nobody complained. They simply waited for direction. Ethan looked around the room. Let's meet in the break area. Within minutes, nearly every employee stood together with coffee cups in their hands. Ethan spoke calmly. We have 2 problems. Our titanium shipment is delayed. Our primary milling machine is down. He paused long enough for everyone to absorb the news. I'm not asking anyone to stay. The room remained silent. I won't promise overtime. Still, no one moved. Finally, Carl stepped forward. You stayed when my wife had cancer. Another employee nodded. You paid us during the flood. A quality inspector smiled. You gave me a second chance after I messed up that inspection years ago. Rosa folded her arms. So stop acting like you're facing this alone. One by one, hands began to rise. I'll stay. So will I. I can work the night shift. I'll cover inspection. Victoria looked around the room in disbelief. No speeches. No applause. Just quiet people choosing one another. By sunset, every available workstation had been rearranged. Jobs normally completed by one machine were divided into smaller operations across 3 others. It wasn't faster. It wasn't easier. But it worked. Victoria removed her blazer, rolled up her sleeves, and joined Rosa at an inspection table. Rosa smiled. You ever use a digital micrometer? Victoria laughed nervously. I negotiate contracts. Tonight you're measuring titanium. For the next several hours, she learned to inspect tiny components, one at a time. Every measurement mattered. Every fraction of an inch mattered. Across the room, Ethan sat briefly at his desk. He opened the worn leather notebook. Between production schedules and handwritten notes rested a folded piece of paper in Emma's familiar handwriting. He unfolded it carefully. Only one sentence filled the page. Do it right. People are counting on you. He smiled quietly before closing the notebook. Without saying a word, he returned to the production floor. Near midnight, Lily entered the factory carrying a small cardboard tray filled with coffee cups and homemade sandwiches. I figured everyone forgot dinner. The room filled with gentle laughter. Carl accepted a sandwich. I think you're saving the whole night. Lily grinned. I learned from Dad. Victoria watched Ethan thank his daughter with nothing more than a warm smile. No grand gesture. Just a father proud of the kindness he had helped grow. As dawn approached, the final production batch rolled toward quality inspection. Every employee gathered nearby. Nobody spoke while Rosa completed the final measurements. She checked each number twice, then a third time. Finally, she looked up. A slow smile appeared. They're perfect. Relief swept through the room like a quiet wave. People hugged. Some laughed. A few wiped away tears. Victoria looked at Ethan. He wasn't celebrating. He was thanking every employee one by one. Only after the last handshake did he finally allow himself to breathe. And just as hope settled over the factory, Ethan's office phone began ringing again. This time, the call came directly from Langford Medical's board of directors. The office phone continued to ring. Ethan looked around the factory one last time before answering. Most of the employees were still gathered near the inspection station, exhausted but smiling after the successful overnight shift. He picked up the receiver. "This is Ethan Brooks." A composed voice answered. "Mr. Brooks, this is Helen Mercer, chair of the Langford Medical Board." "I'm listening." "We've been informed that your team completed the emergency production ahead of schedule." "We completed the first phase," Ethan corrected gently. "There's still more work ahead." Helen paused. "Langford has spoken very highly of your company." Ethan glanced through the office window. Victoria was helping Rosa organize inspection reports instead of resting. "She has a good team," he replied. Helen continued. "Our board would like to meet with you this afternoon." The Langford boardroom felt very different from Ethan's factory. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. A polished walnut table stretched nearly the length of the room. Every chair was already occupied when Ethan and Victoria entered together. Several board members stood to greet him. It was a noticeably warmer welcome than the one he had received at the conference only 2 days earlier. Helen smiled. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming." "Thank you for inviting me." After brief introductions, the company's legal counsel placed a contract on the table. "Our proposal includes an expanded manufacturing agreement, a significant investment in Brooks Precision, and an option for partial ownership should you choose to accept." Silence settled over the room. Victoria looked at Ethan. She knew what many suppliers would do. Negotiate. Demand more. Ask for leverage. Instead, Ethan quietly read each page before setting the document aside. "I have one request." Helen folded her hands. "Please, if Brooks Precision accepts this partnership, no employee at either company loses a job because of this transition." Several board members exchanged surprised glances. Helen finally asked, "That's your only condition?" Ethan nodded. "Your company employs families. So does mine. I won't sign anything that saves one by sacrificing the other." No one spoke for several moments. Victoria felt a lump rise in her throat. For weeks she had listened to conversations about market share, operating cost, and shareholder confidence. No one had walked into that room asking about the people. Helen slowly closed the folder. "I believe we can honor that." Ethan smiled. "No, then I'm ready to sign." The agreement took less than 2 minutes. No dramatic negotiations. No celebration. Just two companies choosing to move forward together.
Can we order, sir?"
Later that afternoon, Ethan stepped outside the headquarters carrying his worn leather notebook beneath one arm. He walked toward the parking lot. Halfway there, he stopped. His old green pickup sat in its usual parking space beneath a maple tree. But something was different. The truck had been carefully washed. Its faded paint still showed every scratch earned over the years, yet it gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. On the driver's seat rested a small handwritten note. "Thank you for reminding us what leadership looks like. The Langford team." Ethan smiled quietly. He didn't look around to see who had left it. He simply folded the note and tucked it inside his leather notebook, beside Emma's handwritten reminder. Across the parking lot, Victoria watched from the building entrance. She never called his name. She didn't need to. For the first time since taking over her father's company, she understood that respect wasn't earned by impressive titles or expensive offices. Sometimes it arrived behind the wheel of an old pickup truck, carrying a lunchbox packed with love. 3 months later, the parking lot at Brooks Precision looked different. Alongside the familiar rows of employee vehicles sat several cars bearing the Langford Medical logo. Engineers, inspectors, and technicians from both companies walked through the front entrance together, greeting one another by name instead of by job title. The partnership had done more than stabilize two businesses. It had brought two groups of people together with a shared purpose. Inside the factory, the employee photo wall had grown. New frames now hung beside the old ones. The latest picture showed workers from both companies standing shoulder to shoulder in front of the production floor. Some wore blue uniforms, others wore white lab coats. Every face carried the same tired but genuine smile. Victoria stood quietly in front of the wall. "It looks like they've always belonged here," she said. Rosa smiled. Maybe they just needed the chance. Outside, laughter drifted across the courtyard where families had gathered for the factory's annual community picnic. Children chased one another between picnic tables while retirees shared stories with apprentices who had only recently begun their careers. Near the entrance, a small crowd surrounded Ethan's old green pickup. Lily looked puzzled. "Dad, why is everyone standing around your truck?" Ethan walked over. The faded paint was still there. So were the tiny dents and scratches collected over countless miles. But the chrome had been carefully polished. The worn wooden bed had been restored. The engine purred with a smooth confidence it hadn't known in years. Carl stepped forward, wiping his hands on a shop towel. "We worked on it after hours." You what?" "Nobody wanted to change it." He smiled. "We just wanted to make sure it could keep carrying memories for a long time." Ethan slowly ran his hand across the driver's door. His eyes settled on a small brass plaque fastened just beneath the window. It read, "Some things are worth carrying for life." He didn't speak. He couldn't. Victoria stepped beside him. "My father wanted to come today." Ethan looked at her. "How is he?" "He still has difficult days." She smiled softly. But yesterday he remembered the name of his first machinist. "I'm glad." He also approved something before he left the office. She handed Ethan a simple folder. Inside was the announcement of the Emma Brooks Skilled Trades Scholarship, created jointly by Langford Medical and Brooks Precision. Each year, it would support apprentices, single parents returning to the workforce, and students pursuing careers in advanced manufacturing. Ethan closed the folder carefully. Emma would have loved this. "I was hoping you'd say that." A few minutes later, Lily slipped into her father's office. She placed Emma's favorite coffee mug on a shelf beside the worn leather notebook and the repaired brass pocket watch, its steady ticking filling the quiet room once again. She smiled. "I think Mom would like it here." Ethan rested a hand on her shoulder. "I think so too." For years, he had believed he was carrying his grief alone. Standing there, surrounded by friends, co-workers, and family, he finally understood the truth. The strongest people are not the ones who never need help. They are the ones who quietly build lives where others are willing to help carry the weight. And sometimes, the greatest journey home begins in the same old truck that never stopped reminding you where your heart belonged. Thank you for spending this time with us. If Ethan and Lily's journey touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever misjudged someone based on first impressions or been misunderstood yourself? Share your story in the comments, because your experience might encourage someone else today. If you enjoyed this story of kindness, integrity, and second chances, please like this video and subscribe for more heartfelt dramas every week, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for being part of our community, and we'll see you in the next story. Life has a quiet way of reminding us that appearances rarely tell the whole story. The people who seem ordinary may be carrying extraordinary strength, deep love, or silent sacrifices that no one else can see. before we judge someone by the car they drive, the clothes they wear, or the title they hold. We should remember that kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. Real success isn't measured by wealth, status, or recognition. It's measured by the lives we live, the promises we keep, and the compassion we show when no one is watching. Every act of integrity plants a seed that may one day grow into hope for someone else. If this story touched your heart, we'd truly love to hear from you. Have you ever been judged unfairly, or has someone surprised you after you got to know them? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire another viewer today. And if you enjoy emotional stories about kindness, family, resilience, and second chances, please give this video a like, subscribe to Drama Tales Official, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next heartfelt journey.